Well, listen, folks, let's just get right into it. Of course, now I have two stories in front of me, and the one we're going to open up with is, of course, the Ubisoft breaking news. Now, this was originally reported this afternoon by IGN.com. The author is the name is Vicky Blake, and Vicky wrote the title as such: Ubisoft shareholder plots protest outside of the Paris headquarters and accuses the company of failing to reveal discussions with Microsoft, EA, and others allegedly interested in acquiring some of their IPs. Now, I'm going to read verbatim from the article, folks, so bear with me. It says this: a minority shareholder in Ubisoft is attempting to organize a protest outside the company's Paris headquarters, accusing it of failing to disclose alleged discussions with Microsoft, EA, and other publishers reportedly interested in acquiring its franchises. Now, the shareholder has pointed out to a restricted article published by business investment platform Merger Market that alleged discussions between Microsoft, EA, and others are interested in acquiring IP from Ubisoft. Management did not inform the public about these steps either. Now, this is what they're claiming. Now, IGN does in fact have a Ubisoft presser, which of course was issued to them concerning the matters here. And I want to read that verbatim. And it says this is directly from Ubisoft, folks. As we mentioned during our Q3 sales, the review of various transformational strategies and capitalistic options are currently ongoing. The board has established an ad hoc independent committee to oversee this formal and competitive process so as to extract the best value from Ubisoft's current assets and franchises for all stakeholders. Ubisoft will inform the market in accordance when applicable moving forward. I'm going to go first to you, Hargeet Chani. Look, again, this is not a full-on Microsoft or EA or others are going to acquire Ubisoft. Now, when I started reading about this through other publications, the words grossly mismanaged continue to come up in the story. And this is something that we've seen happen with Ubisoft over the last couple of years. They've made some pretty hefty investments for games that did not hit for them. The Star Wars game is a perfect example of that. That game went through many transitions during development, came out, it was broken. They wound up having to change the entire game through update after update. Did not sell well. We are now sitting in a second round of consoles with no Splinter Cell. I mean, it's pretty incredible when you consider how many before these two past generations were available. There were tons of Sam Fisher games, and last generation and this current generation, there has been none. Pretty incredible that someone as prominent as Sam Fisher doesn't have his own game. Now, there is rumors that they are working on a reboot of the original. How, it has that?
I thought they announced it. Did they not?
I believe they did announce it. So, yeah, so it's more than just rumors. Yeah, so they're working on it supposedly. Well, it's nowhere to be found. And now we're hearing rumors. So, of course, I'm going to, pose this question to not only the panel, but, of course, the chat. Now, they have a lot of IP. And more specifically, they have the Tom Clancy IPs. And that goes for Splinter Cell, Ghost Recon, Rainbow Six, The Division. I might be missing one in there, but they have a lot of IP. I think that Assassin's Creed is one of those IP that doesn't go anywhere, because without Assassin's Creed, there really isn't a Ubisoft. So I would imagine that is going to stay. But I think everything else is up for grabs. Now, in the story, Hargeet, when I read it aloud, EA was named in one of those publishers that was interested or potentially interested of acquiring some IP. First it was Microsoft, then it was EA, and then it was others. I'm going to be honest with you. I think, and again, this is not being a fanboy, folks. This is just reading the room. Microsoft is already in bed with them because of what happened with the CMA and having to sell the cloud rights to them. So I would imagine that if anyone is in line to buy some of these quote unquote IPs, it's going to be Microsoft. The question is for you and the chat is what IPs do you think Microsoft would be interested in?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because looking at their IP list, it's not like there's anything. So look, they have The Crew, but Microsoft already owns like one of the best freaking racing games in the Forza series.
Yes.
I don't think they need it. And, you know, like what would, I don't know, they could, but like what would be the point? As you said, Assassin's Creed is most likely off the table. I would think Prince of Persia is probably in the same category. You know, if you look at some of the other things like Rayman, maybe, but like that seems like a really like unnecessary thing when they have, you know,
instead of having made a Banjo game. So
they have Banjo, they have Conquer, they have Spyro, they have Crash.
Yeah.
And you know, like I think they're covered. Like what would they need with it's I don't see that being a thing. Like what else do they really like? Red Steel, like they have that. Like who cares? Just Dance.
I mean, Just Dance is still
possible.
a popular IP.
Just Dance possible. It's money,
it's
sir.
like an
Just
annual
Dance
game,
money.
right? It's an annual game. So then the question is it something they'd want to part with? You also have to look at it from a Ubisoft perspective. What generates cash for them, right? So they're going to kind of like, so you say the Tom Clancy's. Well, Rainbow Six is pretty popular. It still makes them money. I don't know where the division is. It is still kind of getting content. So maybe it's still valid and continues to be useful to them. I don't know. I haven't really researched just how much money it makes. It may not be making anything. But the problem is, do you give parts of the Tom Clancy license over, or do you give the Tom Clancy license over? And that becomes kind of an interesting question. You could just say, I'm going to license it and say, I'm not going to acquire it, but I can license it for 10 years, 15 years, whatever, right? And then Microsoft can go make some stuff based on that, right? Much like what Disney does with some of their IPs. It's like, hey, we will license out like Star Wars and let people, or Marvel, and let people make games. Oh, fine. You can do something like that. It's an interesting, like that would probably be the most interesting to Xbox, right? Is like the Tom Clancy series, because there's just games in that, like you mentioned, Splinter Cell. It has an association with Xbox, right? Even though it was everywhere eventually, right? But there's an association with Xbox, right? So Splinter Cell would be a great one for Microsoft to either just fund the game or buy it. But could they buy just that part? And would that be enough value? Would they not want the rest of it? So, and then you say, okay, well, that moneymaker then goes away with Rainbow Six. So I don't know. It's a very tough thing to look at. You say Far Cry. Okay, that's a possibility. Maybe they're like, we're good with that one. And you know, maybe that's something that could transition to an Xbox. You know, and you say EA, maybe they can't buy anything. I think they can muster up enough depending on how much it costs. So it might be a value. You know, like there's potential, I guess, in some of these. Brothers in Arms, you know, Call of Juarez. Again, I don't know how much of these matter. You'd be bringing them back. Potentially, it might be something of value. And then you have to like see, are they getting the teams that make the game, or are they just buying the IP?
Theory. Yeah.
And then are they going to have to find somebody to make that? Is it something interesting to their own studios? Right. So there's a lot of those kind of things that go into it. You know, they have enough IP of their own at this point. Do they really need to go invest in this? Look, to me, if you could get all of Tom Clancy, then fair. That would be a very cool thing to get, right? Because now you get all the Tom Clancy stuff into Game Pass. That would be something of value. Outside of that, you just have to question, is it of value enough to somebody like Xbox? Xbox is now the biggest game publisher, right? It has to be something that's going to be useful enough for them that they don't already cover. And, you know, a lot of the stuff that they have in the Tom Clancy world, Xbox kind of has an answer to, right? And so you could say, okay, maybe they don't have like a 1-to-1, but Splinter Cell, you've got Joanna Dark coming, right? And that's a stealth type game. Maybe there's other ones you could look at they have in the stealth arena, right? So it's not like they don't have like answers to these things. It's just a well-recognized name. Tom Clancy's a well-recognized name. It would be good to have that, right? So there isn't really, I think, look, they tried to create something out of Tom Clancy to be a COD killer. Guess what Microsoft already has? COD. They don't need to have a COD killer. They own COD, right? And this is just like the world they're in now. They have such premier IP. It becomes tough. So I think that would be the only one that makes sense to me. Actually, the one that would be of value to them is Assassin's Creed. That's the thing they would like to have, right? A massive third-person adventure game. That's the thing that they would love to have more of. But I don't know that that's available, right? You could say maybe Prince of Persia would be a good potential other option if that's available, because that's in that same vein, and it's kind of been absent for a while, right? So that's where my head's at. Just Dance is actually kind of an interesting one. I just don't know if they're going to give it up, because, again, it's an annualized game, which is great for Game Pass. You want annualized games because that's perfect, because now you have something that just comes in every year, just like COD, and it gives you that value immediately, right? So, but it's a moneymaker, and I don't know that they want to give it up. If they get it, they'd probably want to get the studio that makes it, right? They'd want to get the whole bloody thing, right? Because that way they just can say, keep making what you're making and just keep putting in Game Pass. So that might be something of value. We always think about the things that we might like, but it's like they have to look at the breadth of gaming and say, what do we not have? And that is one that you could say kind of nice to have, right? Have something like that in your catalog. That always, you want the kids games, they've got some of those. You want this kind of game. It just attracts a certain customer, and it's good to have that in Game Pass. That might be one that's there. I don't know if Ubisoft wants to give it up, but again, if you're going to try to sell something, there's got to be value loss on their side, right? So it's just the way it is, right? They're going to get money for a value that somebody else is going to get. It's just, so it's an interesting one. Like, if it wasn't off the table, I'd say Assassin's Creed is the one that you want to get.
Of course.
I think Just Dance is a very viable option. I think that's a very viable option. And then there's Prince of Persia. I think that might be good. But if they can get the Tom Clancy license, wow. That would be kind of cool.
It's very interesting because, again, they do own a lot of IP. Now, look, there is something to be said about owning. Now, look, let's be clear here. When we say own, I know I saw a lot of exclusive, folks. Here's the thing.
Oh, somebody mentioned one in the chat that I forgot about because they've stopped making it. Watch Dogs.
Yes,
that actually is an interesting one. Because they said they're done. They're done with it.
They stole mine. That one was mine. Keep going. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Now, which game is that?
Watch Dog.
Oh,
they've said they're done with
it. Goldmine.
They're done with it. And it's like, well, okay, if you're done with it, maybe somebody else wants to take a stab at it.
I mean, that's possible. I forgot about that IP because the second one is my favorite in the series. Third one was actually pretty good, where you kept, changing Legion, your person. Right? You could be like an old lady, which was great.
Legion, really good.
It was pretty good. It was decent.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I played enough of it to enjoy it. But the second one with Marcus and the rest of that crew was absolutely phenomenal. I actually got 1,000 out of 1,000 achievements on that game. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, this is one of those stories that we don't know where it's going to go. The cat's out of the bag because obviously this investor kind of is, and he's on his own, right? He's a minority shareholder, not somebody sitting at the table, and he's trying to make a stink. Listen, cat's out of the bag. They're talking to Microsoft, they're talking to EA, and others. Who those others
IGN
are?
Put this up, so there's got to be some substantial enough. This is real media, right? So
yes,
it's got to be a substantial enough, story that they've validated that. Yep, there's some truth to this. So,
well, what's interesting, and I just want to add some context to that before we bring in Keasante. In the story, it goes on to say that back in October, Bloomberg reported that Ubisoft's founding. How do you say the family's name? Is Guillemot?
Guillemot.
Yes, Guillemot. That's how I say it.
It only works when my finger goes like this together. Guillemot.
the Guimont family and shareholder Tencent were in discussions to take the company private following a number of high-profile flops, game cancellations, and the collapse of the company's share price. At the time, the talks were merely exploratory, and Ubisoft told IGN it would inform the market if and when it was appropriate. Now, it does go on to say, and I want to stress this, folks. I don't think a lot of people remember what's been going on with them. According to the article, it says for several years now, Ubisoft has seemed to be in a strange, slow, downward spiral with a number of high-profile flops, layoffs, studio closures, game cancellations, and one delay after another. And that is really, that kind of sums up what's going on with Ubisoft. I mean, just look what happened with the newest Assassin's Creed. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a great game. Some people got codes and are playing it right now. I did not get a code, but that's also, I didn't request for one. I don't want to review that game. I just want to enjoy it. They're in Japan, folks. It's my dream come true, so I want to enjoy it as a gamer, which is why I didn't request to review it. But here's the thing. They have a lot of problems, and they are bleeding money, que Asante. There's no doubt about it. It's clear as day that it's a lot of mismanagement. First of all, let's get your thoughts on the report. And obviously, besides Watch Dogs, do you have any other ones that you were hoping they would bring home?
So this is a long time coming, right? To me, Ubisoft is one of the greats, the old greats. I actually have a little bit of a history with Ubisoft. I actually got to see some of their studios a long time ago in Montreal. Like, I got a chance to tour. A buddy of mine worked there. A buddy of mine, I have some friends that have worked there in the past, so I know some stuff about it. So take everything I'm saying with that grain of salt. You know, I have some history with them, so I have friends who told me things in the background. But I too have loved, like, one of my old favorite games that I recall that was a Ubisoft game that I learned. What are studios and what are publishers and why do I care? Rayman was so different when it first came out. I remember playing it on something like this that was not an Xbox controller. It was like the generic Grievous generic pad with the thumbstick on it back in the day. You know what I mean? Rayman, it was a brilliant platformer. Before that, only Mario was platformer, right? If you weren't Mario, you didn't exist. But Rayman carved its own niche, and for a long time, Ubisoft has been doing very interesting and good work. But yeah, the owners, the Guimont family are a bunch of not so good people. I'll just put it that way. They have been allowing a lot of bad behavior to fester.
Can we say boobs?
Yeah, boobs, enablers. They just don't deserve to basically hold the lineage of Ubisoft. What do you call it? Bonus points for those who know what UB means. Ubiquitous Software is their name, which is a very weird name. But needless to say, as you guys were chatting, as Hargeet was chatting, and I completely agree with this assessment as to like where Microsoft specifically, where their need would be here. I was kind of looking through it. I was like, hey, let me use, because we have these robots, these digital robots that can do some wonderful aggregating for us. let me use these robots to aggregate the amount of IPs that Ubisoft owns. And yeah, to your point, they have like some very stellar IPs that we all know and love. And I even asked the robot to add some pricing or estimated value based on sales, DLC, all of that, right? To extrapolate and give estimated value of these IPs. So can you imagine how much Assassin's Creed is valued right now? This is all estimated, of course, between $800 million to $1 billion.
Wow.
That is between $800 million to $1 billion IP. And this is every piece of that franchise, all the games, everything that has come together to make up that Assassin's Creed franchise. This seconded, you have the Far Cry franchise. You have now to Hargeet's point, the Tom Clancy franchise. The reason why that is so lucrative is because combined, it's about $600 million in value, and they own that IP, that naming right, in perpetuity. So for forever in the day, they can just put Tom Clancy's whatever on any box they want, right? So it is very interesting that a lot of our great IPs, and by the way, Hargi, Just Dance, estimated value between 200 and 250 million dollars.
Wow.
And
Worth it.
yes,
Worth it.
absolutely, 250 million dollars every year. It just spitting out more. Watch Dogs between 150 and 200 million dollars.
Holy
The Crew between yes,
Wow.
the Crew between 100 million and 150. The problem with Ubisoft is it's not that they don't have killer high level making money, bringing money home IPs. It's just it costs them so much to make it, so much overhead, so much like employees and marketing and this, and they cannot sustain themselves unless every franchise is $1 billion IP, and they can't all be $1 billion IPs, right? You can't tell me Watch Dogs, estimated at 150 to 200 million dollars, is a bad IP and a failure, so it should get thrown out with the bathwater. That is a great IP with good games that could potentially grow if you keep, adding more installments into it. You know what I mean? They just, because they are so huge and have such a problem with management, and optimizing their spend and all of that, it makes every single IP that potentially is valuable to them have to clear such a high bar that none of these IPs will ever reach that. You know what I'm saying? Even their highest IP in the form of Assassin's Creed, being $1 billion franchise, is still not enough to save their ass at this point, as we see. You know what I'm saying? It is unfortunate, but there's a lot of good stuff in their IPs. Like, do you know that the Settlers IPs are 20 million to 30 million in value? Just those IPs alone.
Wow.
Like, all of their IPs are worth a substantial amount of money. It's just a problem of they need to slim themselves down enough to be able to make benefit of the money that's coming in, and that's where they are right now. Avatar is worth between 75 to 100 million dollars right now. That game they made between the two games, right? They own the Myst IP. Obviously, Microsoft could buy the Myst IP. What's the service game that they have that's actually pretty good? Also about $50 million it's worth. Rocksmith, the Guitar Hero, but it's teaching you to play guitar thing. Those are some service things that I suspect Microsoft could potentially get their hands on and do something interesting with. But it's just unfortunate, man. Like it'll be a sad day when these guys go down, because I suspect it's only inevitable at this point, because I feel like they're one of the last great, creative houses that used to walk that thin line of creativity and finance, right? The rest of them just kind of gave up the ghost. These were the last holdouts, but what are you going to do? Yeah. And unfortunately, for those who think Microsoft will swoop in and buy them, they are not able to do so. So right. Unless some new wallet shows up, we shall see where all of this goes.